Greetings and or salutations as they suit you. I'm Jacob with the PsyborgAimes, and today we're going to talk about resilience as survival versus resilience as living through the masterpiece that is Hollow Knight. Resilience is usually talked about as toughness, the ability to withstand stress, to bounce back, to keep going when things get hard. And that's not wrong. If you've made it through something difficult, something that should have broken you, then yes, that's resilience. But resilience isn't neutral. You can adapt too well. You can harden, overcompensate, optimize for survival so completely that you lose the capacity to live fully. Sometimes the thing that kept you going is also the thing that keeps you stuck. In case you haven't heard of it, Hollow Knight is a 2D action platformer, which just means you move left and right through hand-drawn environments, jumping, fighting, and exploring as you go. The world is open, but not immediately accessible. You'll often see places you can't reach yet. As you explore, you unlock new abilities, things like higher jumps, or being able to cling to walls, that let you return to old areas and go deeper. If you've heard the term Metroidvania, that's what this is. Exploration driven by gradual capability, not linear progression. The game takes place in the fallen kingdom of Hallownest, an underground world that feels quiet, oppressive, and strangely empty. It's hostile, but not in a loud or bombastic way. Life exists here, but it's sparse, faded, and often clinging on out of habit rather than hope. Everything feels like it's surviving long past the point it should have ended. Moment to moment, the game is simple. You explore, you fight, you die, and you try again. When you die, you're sent back to the last place you rested, usually a bench, and the game leaves behind a shadow of yourself at the place you fell. To recover what you lost, you have to return there and confront it. Progress then isn't about avoiding failure. It's about enduring it. And that's where Hollow Knight starts asking something interesting. Not, can you survive this world? But, what does survival cost you over time? At its core, Hollow Knight isn't really about defeating enemies or conquering a world. It's about endurance, about continuing relentlessly in a place that is both hostile and apathetic. The knight you play as doesn't speak. It doesn't question its role. It doesn't ask whether this journey is worth the cost. It simply moves forward. That repetition, that relentless forward motion, shows us a side of resilience we don't often talk about, and for good reason. This is resilience as survival. This isn't growth, and this isn't healing. It's just getting through. You don't actually get stronger by fighting enemies. You can avoid them, slip past, dash through, keep moving. But evasion carries risk. Fighting carries risk. Pain is unavoidable either way. Pain leads to death, and then you go again and again and again. The world reinforces this message through the fall of Hallownest. It wasn't weakness that ended this kingdom. It was an attempt to resolve pain through containment. The logic is simple. If you seal something tightly enough, for long enough, it will stop hurting. And for a while, that works. When containment reaches its limit, you're back at endurance. And this is where Hollow Knight starts to become unsettling. The knight doesn't reflect on its path. There isn't a moment of doubt, and there isn't an option to stop and ask whether this path still makes sense. The way forward isn't chosen, it's obligatory. Which is striking because it clashes with what we usually associate with a knight. Knights are dutiful, yes, but they're also brave. They may be afraid, but they act anyway because they believe it's right. This knight moves forward for a different reason. Not because it's right, but because there isn't another option. Even rest in Hollow Knight isn't really rest. Benches don't restore safety. They don't change the world. They just keep you close to the coalface, so that when you fall, you're back in the fight sooner. And when you gain new abilities, something that should feel empowering, the world doesn't become easier. It becomes larger. More danger is revealed. More places you now have to survive. Progress increases responsibility instead of reducing threat. The resilience we see in the knight isn't something that's chosen. It's automatic. And when resilience becomes automatic, it stops being strength. It becomes inertia. You keep moving, not because it's good, but because stopping feels worse. In real life, when we suppress things, they don't disappear. They come back as symptoms. Anxiety, exhaustion, numbness, irritability, disconnection. That's something Hollow Knight captures beautifully in how Hallow Nest has changed. What was sealed away doesn't stay contained. It leaks, distorts, and infects the world around it. But it's important not to strip suppression of its original intent. Suppression is rarely about denial. It's about survival. It's when we start thinking, I don't know what else to do right now, so I'll bury this until I can. In that sense, suppression isn't a moral failure. It's a necessary evil. And in the world of Hollow Knight, it worked. For a time. Long enough for the kingdom to continue. Long enough for things to look stable. But eventually, that survival strategy becomes the problem that needs to be addressed. If you're listening to this and thinking, that's me, I am the Hollow Knight, then I want to be clear in something. Survival mode is not a failure state or a flaw. It is your body's way of adapting to situations that are beyond your normal operating scope. And if you're surviving, you aren't dead yet. Wonderful. But survival mode is meant to be temporary. You can't force your way out of survival mode if survival is all you're doing. You don't push through it with willpower or insight. You exit it when safety increases, and those safety steps come little by little. Sometimes that looks like one extra step in the next cycle. Sometimes it's giving yourself permission to rest. Sometimes it's recognizing that you don't have to wait for the shadow of the Reaper before you're allowed to catch your breath. That's where growth and healing actually begin. Hollow Knight doesn't ask you to judge the night for being empty. It asks you to notice what emptiness costs and why it made sense in the first place. And maybe to wonder what might become possible if survival didn't have to do all the work anymore. If conversations like this feel helpful, you're welcome to subscribe or say hi in the comments. And if there's a game you'd like me to explore next, let me know. Thanks for being here. Rest gently and be kind to your mind.